Cahill of Baseball America joins us on the Farm Bureau Guest Line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team. So, big picture thought to start, Teddy. What are you looking forward to most this weekend as conference play begins around the country?
Well, I mean, it's a really exciting weekend in the SEC. You've got 3 top 25 matchups, and you've got a big one with A&M trying to stay undefeated on the road at Florida, which is you really could use something after the loss on Tuesday to Florida State dropped them to 10-6, and you've got teams that we're still trying to figure out like what's real and what's not. You've got Georgia sitting at 17-1 going on the road for the first time this year. For a weekend series, so I'm excited about that. Like, of the 7 SEC series this weekend, like 5 or 6 of them really, really have my attention.
Teddy, just in the early going here, what's been the biggest surprise to you in SEC baseball so far?
I think the way Florida has pitched has probably got to be right there at the top of that list. I mean, the Gators, Kevin O'Sullivan built them into a powerhouse based on pitching and defense, and right now their pitching staff is the worst in the SEC by team ERA, and that's pretty jarring. It's a problem for them, and it's not something that I anticipated coming into the season. I knew they were going to be a lot younger on the mound this year, but to see them having the struggles that they have to this point on the mound has really been surprising.
Here in Starkville, last year was a year of struggles on the mound. It feels like State has gotten some of those pitching issues taken care of, some of those defensive issues taken care of. But now they are struggling at the plate, and with LSU coming in this weekend, Nate Doan, the State just announced, will not be in the starting rotation this weekend. What does State have to do to be able to be competitive with this LSU team? And I ask that knowing that State won the series against LSU a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's a much different LSU team. Like last year, they were super offensive, and it was Paul Skeens on Friday night, and that was like those two things were the big scary things about LSU. And this year, the entire rotation has been outstanding to this point this season. Luke Coleman hasn't allowed a run. Gage Jump in several less innings hasn't allowed a run. You're really going to have to come with it and be able to match up with LSU on the mound this year. And there are not too many teams out there that are going to be capable of doing that. On the flip side, LSU's not hitting the way that they have been, so I expect this to be more low scoring. And it's just not an ideal weekend for Mississippi State to try and get right offensively. So they're going to have to match LSU's arms to be able to pull this one out.
Teddy Cahill of Baseball America joining us right now. Flipping over to Oxford. For those that haven't seen or don't know much about this South Carolina team, give us an elevator pitch. What are we going to see from the Gamecocks this weekend?
Well, if I hadn't said Florida's pitching performance has been the most surprising thing this year, I might have said South Carolina's, because this was supposed to be a really offensive team. Like, the idea behind South Carolina coming into this year was really offensive, upside on the mound, but we don't know what it's going to look like. They lost a lot from last year's team. And it's actually been an incredible unit on the mound. They're second in the nation right now in ERA. And yeah, the schedule hasn't been incredible, but it's also not been bad. They played Clemson twice. So what they can do pitching wise, I'm very interested in. And I think that I'm super interested in seeing what they can do against an Ole Miss offense that has done a much better job of late. And the bats are still there. They've been a little slower out of the gate than South Carolina would have liked. But in Ethan Petrie, you've still got one of the best hitters in the conference that you're going to have to contend with. And it can be a deep lineup, but the pitching has been surprisingly good right to this point.
Ole Miss got off to a pretty awful start, especially for their standards. Have improved lately, winning a bunch of games now. But if you look at the quality of opponent, Iowa would, possibly will finish at the top of the Big Ten, but not exactly the best schedule on earth. Are you buying Ole Miss yet?
I'm more into Ole Miss at 12-5 than I am Mississippi State, and I think some of it is just it feels like since that rough start that Ole Miss might have found something, that like they may have figured out what their best lineup is. Mississippi State's been just a little bit more uneven in getting to 12-5 from, again, not a fantastic start. So I'm cautiously buying where Ole Miss is at right now. I still have questions long term about things on the mound, but I do think that the way they're hitting it has me much more encouraged than I was a few weeks ago.
Teddy, down in Hattiesburg, the Golden Eagles got a really nice win on Tuesday against Alabama. They're a top 20, I think, RPI team as we sit here. I know it's early, but you can say it already. And they start Sunbelt play this week. Where do you like the Golden Eagles in the Sunbelt? Do you think when we look up at the end of the season, they're going to be right there on the top again?
I think that they have the ability to be. What they've done over the last week, going and winning that series at La Tech and then beating Alabama on Tuesday, has been really, really important for them. Coastal probably remains the favorite. The way that the Chants are hitting the baseball, they're doing it exactly what they did last year, basically, and they won the league with that. I think Southern Miss, we've been so close to ranking them, and it just feels like every week I'm like, well, I wish they hadn't just gone 2-2 again. And, it seems like they're just a little bit short right now. I think in the Sun Belt, they're going to be just fine. They're probably right there behind Coastal in the pecking order for me. And I do what they've done over the last week. Maybe they're starting to build the right pieces as well.
Is Tennessee legit?
I think that they should be. I'm a believer right now. The schedule for them has been pretty poor since they left Arlington on opening weekend, but I generally believe they've done just such an incredible job offensively, the way that they've reloaded that lineup. And they're not operating at completely full strength on the mound right now, but what they do have in A.J. Causey and Drew Beam as the 1-2 punch in the rotation, I'm pretty encouraged by.
Sort of the same question about Texas A&M. They're sitting there at 17-0, and they are absolutely mashing the baseball. How long can this winning streak go for them?
So I probably ends this weekend because you're on the road at Florida, and though I am very concerned about the Gators right now, and I find the Gator pitching versus the A&M offense to be a pretty bad matchup for Florida. Like, to think you would go in and sweep in Gainesville that's probably not happening. I think what's real with A&M is, like, some things are real, some things are not real. Like, their schedule has not been great. They've played almost entirely at home, and they're really, really hard to beat at home. But they've also worked really hard the last two games to beat Rhode Island and Sam Houston State at home. And last week we saw TCU, which was 13-0, go on the road for the first time at Kansas. And TCU is another team that had worked really hard to be undefeated. They constantly have been, having to come back in games. They get down and then they fight back and they walk off with wins a lot. And that's A&M too, to a certain extent. And they just haven't been tested in a road environment, a road conference environment. So I do wonder a little bit if what happened to TCU when they got for 2 games at Kansas could also be coming to A&M. I think they're good. I think they're a team that can go to Omaha. But I do think that some of the Olsen magic is, it can't last forever, and it can't last on the road.
Only got about a minute left with you, Teddy. The ACC, last weekend, huge series between Duke and Wake Forest. Clemson also ranked in the top 10. Virginia is going to be ranked. Who is the best team in the ACC right now?
By rankings, it would be Duke, and they certainly earned it after beating Wake on the road last weekend. But, I feel really good about Clemson. They're sitting there at 15-1. The one is a goofy loss to Kennesaw State on a Friday. Otherwise, they have been lights out. They swept South Carolina. It was 2 close games, but they got the wins. And now they just haven't lost ACC games. If you look at the way they finished last season, they've got a tough one this weekend, though, at Duke. And the winner of that one will very much have earned the title of early season ACC favorite.
Teddy, you're the best, man. Thank you.